Good morning, Chargers fans. I hope you guys are doing well after that surprising round of cuts yesterday and those uninspiring but unsurprising keepers decisions that they made. But we're gonna get into the practice squad because the Chargers can stash a lot of really good talent here. I think there's a lot of talent worth developing. So let's talk about who they're going to keep, who they're going to let go. We're going to start with some of the guys that we know publicly-ish that they're going to keep, whether that be because the team said something or a coach said something or a beat writer reported said something. We'll talk about some of those guys. Then we're going to get into some guys that we, as in Steven and I, know they are not going to keep around, which is really unfortunate. And you are not going to like it, but I figured I'd let you guys know before the actual announcements. So here we are. And then we're going to try to build out the rest of the roster. So I'm just going to keep 10 guys. I don't want to go through all 16. There literally aren't even enough guys to make that work that I think that are actually going to stick around, especially after I tell you who they're not going to bring back. So I'm going to go with 10, the best 10, if you will. And then the other guys that they bring in to fill out the 16, if they choose to fill out the 16, would be from different teams. So let's start with the guys that we sort of know, pending them clearing waivers, of course, that they'd like to keep around the practice squad. The first is Darius Bradwell, which is great. In a year where it looks like he got better, and then looking ahead to potentially moving on from Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson, keeping a guy like Bradwell around is great. I think he deserves to at least stick around on the practice squad. And with more touches, I think he could have been, potentially RB4, but just didn't work out. And that's okay. Another one that Steven actually broke yesterday was Braden Fehoko. It sounds like the team wants to keep him around if he clears waivers as well, which is great. The decision to move on from him and keep Merrill, it was pretty close. Fehoko was statistically better by a little bit and had the vet experience. So there was some surprise there, but it's hard to argue that Forrest Merrill, didn't deserve it. He did. So he made it. Fehoko didn't, but they're looking to keep Fehoko around, and that's great. Another one is Hunter Kampmoyer. It sounds like, again, pending them clearing waivers, sounds like Hunter Kampmoyer could stick around. And this is a good future look, kind of like Bradwell, looking to the future move as well, because, I believe Trey McKitty is the only one they have under contract in 2022, right? Cook's 1 year, Parham was a 2-year deal with one left. Anderson was a 1-year deal, and McKitty's a draft pick. So keeping something like Kampmoyer around, who could kind of do what Steven Anderson does as that blocking tight end in the backfield, I think would be a really, really smart move. And he's looked pretty good. He just, it is what it is. They just didn't have enough space for him. They would have maybe liked to keep him, but 5 tight ends and a fullback wouldn't have been a great way to build your roster out. So that's kind of who we know. I'm going to also assume Emeka Egbule is one of them as well, because I think going into the season with the active roster with 4 pass rushers is fine, but then not having anybody else, maybe a Jesse Lemonnier or something, but not having Emeka Egbule out there would be surprising. But I do think he potentially returns. That'll be my first guess of the day. The other one I want to talk about is the little asterisk here was Keemon Hall, because if Ryan Smith is activated, I do believe the cut guy is Keemon Hall, and I believe that he would go to the practice squad. So again, Hall's on the roster. I just think as soon as they activate Smith, Hall goes to the practice squad, which is fine. So those 5 guys are kind of your, the start of your practice squad, if you will. All right, let's get into the players that you're going to not like to hear about leaving. It is what it is. I 99% believe the person that told me this. I have no reason to not believe this person or trust that they actually know what they're talking about. So unfortunately, let's start with the big one. Cortez Broughton is not being brought back to the practice squad. I couldn't tell you why. It makes no sense to me. In fact, based on what we hear, it is actually a surprise to the team and the players in general about that some of these cuts were made. Cortez Broughton was, in my opinion, I think, and even statistically, probably the best pound for pound, play for play interior defensive lineman of the preseason and training camp. You heard nothing but good things about him. And I'm pretty sure, all of us had Broughton making the roster, right? Even though, potentially they didn't need another defensive tackle because they wanted more nose tackles. It's hard to argue that they would cut Broughton. Now, it sounds like the plan was to always have 5 interior defensive linemen, but the belief was that Covington was going to be the backup nose tackle. Now, potentially that's maybe an in-game thing if Joseph gets hurt, or a rotational thing. And maybe they could bring up, let's say, Fehoko or Merrill if they were on the practice squad, the next week to fill out that injury. But yeah, so it sounded like Covington was going to be the nose tackle and that they were going to keep the fifth interior defensive lineman was going to be one of those pass rushing defensive tackles like a Cortez Broughton. Obviously, like I said, that stunned them. And so now we know that, Forrest Merrill made it. And, he totally deserves it. But it was definitely a surprise to us that, Broughton and Fehoko were let go in favor of Merrill. But it is what it is. The other one that's not going to make you guys happy, here I go, is Tyrone Johnson. Tyrone Johnson is not returning to the Chargers, which is a wild thing that I would not have guessed 24 hours ago. Yet here we are, with all the reports and everything, yada, yada. Tyrone Johnson is not just cut from the team, but he's not returning to the practice squad as well. Now, I understand if he can't make the active roster. I don't. But I can understand if he doesn't make the active roster because he has no special teams value. If you want to keep a guy over Johnson because they have more special teams value, fine. I think it's a mistake, but it is what it is. But not even bringing back to the practice squad is a head scratcher for me for sure. Now, it's potential that potentially he gets claimed on waivers anyway. This is, useless to talk about. And of the three guys that I'm going to talk about right now, it does seem like Johnson probably has the best shot to be claimed by another team, but still a surprise. And I just want to come out and say that I don't think it's a character issue thing. Brandon Staley came out and said that it was two things. One, that it was just a numbers battle and they just could not get him to stay on the roster because they needed other players. So if you want to point fingers, this isn't fair, but point it at Stick, Kelly, Pipkins, a fourth tight end, even technically Ogbongbemiga, like some of those guys that there's a couple of those guys they should have kept, I totally agree with, but someone like Kelly is way too extra. Kelly's not going to get a lot of touches. I don't know how many Tyrone Johnson would have gotten, but if you're asking me which one makes my offense better, I think it's Tyrone Johnson, but Kelly does play some special teams. How well he plays them, we'll find out, but he does play some special teams. That's what makes him slightly more valuable. So they went with him. But again, keeping Tyrone Johnson, not keeping him was odd. Not even putting him on the practice squad is even more odd, if not frustrating. But that's all I can tell you. The other one, and the only other one that I know that is not returning, is John Brannon. Yeah. So if you went into this video hoping that I would say Broughton, Brannon, and Johnson, I've just let you down significantly. The Brannon not returning. Look, of the three corners, the bubble corners, Campbell, Hall, and Brannon. Of those three bubble corners, Brannon had the least shot or the smallest shot of making the final roster because although he had a pretty solid training camp, it sounded like, and he had that really great interception against the Rams, it looked like his stock was sky high. By the time they got to the third game, he was phased out almost completely. I don't believe he played any snaps. If he did, it was barely anything. It was all the Campbell and Hall show, or Faison and Webb and then those guys. So no John Brannon at all. I'm a little surprised. So, of these guys, which one surprises you the most? Brannon, Broughton, and Johnson, all not being brought back. That's odd. So the rest, I don't know anything about. It's the bolded ones are the ones we know publicly. The ones I crossed out are the ones that Steven and I know about, which is a stunner. And again, it stunned us. It stunned the players. So we're all in this together. So let's find 5 other guys that I think they would keep around. So we have Bradwell, Egbule, Fehoko, Kent Moyer, and Hall right now. The only one I'm not so sure about is Egbule. Hall will eventually be there if he clears waivers when they cut him in favor of Smith. Unless Hall balls out, right? And they have no choice but to keep him because he's amazing. But I think he would be the first cut. So we need 5 other guys. What do you do? I do think it's so tough. And I honestly don't know how they build around their practice squads. But one guy I think is a slam dunk to stick around, especially because Johnson is gone, is Jason Moore. I do think Jason Moore sticks around and there's no reason to move on from him. He's been around this team, Telesco keeps him around. He had a really good training camp until he didn't. And then he got hurt. And then we heard from nothing from him again. But Moore is a guy that they should definitely keep around. I do think that they keep around a Ryan Hunter. I have him listed as a tackle for some reason, but he's going to be their guard. I do think Hunter sticks around. Steven is very high on him. And I think, sure. I think Ryan Hunter is a guy that should absolutely stick around. As far as defensive guys, I think Joe Gaziano sticks around. He was a guy that was statistically very good in the preseason, had a lot of pressures, was very active in the run game as well. A guy that they like. And I thought that I didn't think he would make the roster, but I think he was a pretty solid bet to make the practice squad because they had the familiarity with him and keep developing him. I believe he was more of an edge guy out of college. He transitioned to interior defensive line this year. He looks a lot better. So developing him, I think, would be really good. So what am I at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I need 2 more guys. One of them I do think is Ben DeLuca, not because I've been shilling for him all off season, but because they have 4 safeties and then that's it. So I do think they need to have somebody back there who knows something about this defense and this team to stick around. So I do think DeLuca is a guy they should keep around. And then finally, this is tough. Of the guys that are here, it's not going to be Badgley. We know Badgley's not returning. So there's that. There's an easy decision for me. So it comes down to, do you want another wide receiver who can do some punt return? KJ Hill sort of like things, I guess. Do you want another linebacker in Christensen? Do you want another lineman in Gilliam? Do you want Joe Reed? To me, if you're asking me to pick between one of these guys that are on here, I do think I'm going to go with Michael Bandy, to be completely honest. And I just think that, other than Hill, Bandy's the only other guy who could kind of do punt returns, and have some special teams value to him. So I could see in a pinch where if a guy is hurt, especially if Hill's hurt, that Bandy is called up. So Moore is more of your, wide receiver replacement, but Bandy is more of your special teams help. So I do think that's a guy that could stick around. So no Christensen. Again, honestly, if I'm being completely honest, if I had to do more than 10, I do think he sticks around because they need another guy. And he's been around with the team. He knows what he's doing. And I think he's been a pretty solid contributor in the preseason. So I think he sticks around. Really, the only guys I don't think that they could, nothing wrong with it. But like Joe Reed, I think is pretty much done at this point. Nate Gilliam, I don't know much about him. That's it for me. So of the 10 that I would keep, so of the other guys that are here, the 10 that I would keep, or I've heard they're going to keep, or the guys that I can't keep because I know they're going to be let go and not even returned at all. I have Bandy, Bradwell, DeLuca, Egbele, Fahoko, Gaziano, Hunter, Cantmoyer, Moore, and Hall. I should have Lemonnier on here. I don't. Oops. But I do think Egbele would possibly get that shot over Lemonnier. So we'll see. But I could be completely wrong. The only ones we kind of know about are Bradwell wants to stick around. Or they want Bradwell to stick around. They want Fahoko to stick around. They want Cantmoyer to stick around. And they're definitely letting go of Brennan, Broughton, and Johnson. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So any of these guys you're particularly interested in, is there a guy that you would like the Chargers to add to this practice squad that may have been on waivers, kind of floating around, somewhere? I don't know who it is, but you guys are a lot better at figuring out who these guys are than I am. So that's it from me. Take care, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day and bolt up.